Astra stood in the center of docking bay, 7 with her hands on her hips and a wrench in one hand, while behind her a fuel distribution manifold sprayed luminescent coolant in a perfect arc across the translucent energy barrier. The mist created a rainbow effect in the ambient blue lighting that she might have appreciated if the bay's hovercarts weren't sliding sideways on the increasingly slick floor and crashing into each other with rhythmic, metallic clangs. "I really thought that would work," she said to Colton, who was pressed against the far wall, holding his data pad in front of his face like a shield. "You said that about the gravity stabilizer," Colton replied without lowering the data pad, "and the air recycler, and the ER." "Those were flukes," Astra interrupted. She walked toward the spraying manifold, and her boots squeaked on the coolant-slicked floor. Her feet went out from under her, and she landed hard on her back. The wrench skittered away and knocked into a hovercart, which began spinning in lazy circles. "Okay, that one's on me." The bay's emergency klaxons had been wailing for 6 minutes. Astra had stopped noticing them around minute 2. She was pulling herself up using a fuel line when the bay doors opened, and a figure entered with precise, measured steps that somehow avoided every puddle of coolant and sliding cart. Astra noticed his logic veins first because they were pulsing rapidly in bright patterns across his muted, peach-toned skin. The Selfari moved with his narrow waist, perfectly balanced over powerful legs, and his 2 luminous steel blue eyes locked onto her with an intensity that made her want to explain everything immediately. "Hi," Astra said brightly. "You're probably wondering. Remain where you are," the Selfari said. His rounded skull angled exactly 30 degrees to the left, and his layered auditory folds shifted slightly. The glowing veins running along his arms and neck pulsed faster. "I am Vekrin. Station, security, probability hunter designation. You are Astra Chelton, human, academy engineering student." "That's me," Astra grinned and tried to brush coolant off her jumpsuit, which only spread it around. "Listen, this looks bad, but I was actually helping. The docking bay has sustained catastrophic systems failure across 14 independent networks." Vekrin's head tilted back to center with mechanical precision. "The probability of simultaneous failure is 0.003%. The probability of human involvement is 98.4%. His breathing slowed noticeably. "The probability of your specific involvement is 99.7%. Colton emerged from behind his data pad. "How did you calculate that so fast?" Vekrin's auditory folds twitched. "You are Colton Weir, also human, also Academy engineering student. Probability of collusion, 73%. "Collusion sounds illegal," Colton said, and immediately hid behind the data pad again. "I prefer the term collaborative innovation," Astra said. The manifold behind her made a groaning sound, and the spray intensified. A hovercart crashed into the wall. "And technically, I haven't done anything wrong. I was performing routine maintenance." Vekrin's steel blue eyes didn't blink. "Routine maintenance does not typically result in structural damage estimated at 400,000 credits." 400,000? Astra's voice cracked. "That seems high." "The estimate increases every 17 seconds, Vekrin said. His logic veins pulsed in a rapid staccato pattern. "I require your statement. You will accompany me to station security." "Am I under arrest?" Astra asked. "I am still calculating that probability," Vekrin replied. The station security office was cramped and smelled like recycled air and something vaguely floral that Astra couldn't identify. She sat at the interrogation table that was bolted to the floor, while Vekrin stood across from her with his sensor thread harness gleaming under the harsh white overhead lighting. Wall-mounted monitors displayed different sectors of the station, and Astra could see Docking Bay 7 on one screen, where repair crews in environment suits were attempting to approach the still-spraying manifold. Colton had been placed in a chair by the door, where he scrolled through his data pad with increasing panic. "Let's begin at the beginning," Vekrin said. His breathing had returned to normal, but his logic veins still pulsed with faint light. "What were you doing in docking bay 7 at 0600 hours?" "Fulfilling my Academy practicum requirements," Astra said helpfully. "We're supposed to log 50 hours of station maintenance. I was being proactive." "Proactive," Vekrin repeated. His head angled precisely. "Super proactive," Astra nodded enthusiastically. "I got there early because I noticed something interesting about the fuel distribution network during our orientation tour last week. The manifold pressure regulators were operating at baseline efficiency, but I calculated that with a simple bypass modification, I could improve flow rates by 12%. Vekrin's auditory folds shifted. The system was operating at intended capacity. "Well, yeah, but intended capacity isn't optimal capacity." Astra leaned forward. "See, the original designers didn't account for the thermal expansion coefficients of the newer coolant mixtures. I ran the numbers and—" "You modified a primary fuel distribution system," Vekrin interrupted, "without authorization." "I prefer to think of it as unauthorized optimization," Astra said. Colton made a strangled sound from his chair by the door. "Walk me through the modification," Vekrin said. His logic veins pulsed faster. "Okay, so first I bypassed the primary pressure regulator," Astra began. She pulled a stylus from her tool belt and started drawing on the table surface with her finger like it was a holographic display. "That allowed me to reroute coolant flow through the secondary intake manifold, which freed up capacity in the main line. Then I recalibrated the temperature sensors because they were obviously reading high by at least 3 degrees. "They were calibrated correctly," Vekrin said. "They were calibrated adequately," Astra corrected. "Anyway, once I adjusted the sensors, I realized the feedback loop to the distribution control system was creating unnecessary throttling, so I just disconnected it." Vekrin's breathing stopped entirely for 3 full seconds. "You disconnected the feedback loop." "It was throttling," Astra repeated like this. "Explained everything." "The feedback loop prevents cascading pressure failures," Vekrin said slowly. His logic veins were pulsing so fast they created a strobe effect across his skin. "Well, I know that now," Astra said. "But at the time I was focused on optimizing flow rates, which I definitely achieved. Did you see the pressure from that spray? Textbook fluid dynamics." A monitor on the wall beeped urgently. Vekrin turned his rounded skull toward it with exact precision, and his steel-blue eyes narrowed. "The cascade has reached fuel storage tank 3. "Is that bad?" Astra asked. "Tank 3 supplies 12% of station fuel reserves," Vekrin said. "If the pressure failure reaches the main coupling, the entire storage complex will require emergency shutdown and purge." "Oh," Astra said in a small voice. "How long does a purge take?" 6 to 8 weeks, Vekrin replied, followed by recertification testing, 12 to 14 weeks total. Colton dropped his datapad. "But the investigation should be quick, right?" Astra said hopefully. "I mean, I'm telling you everything, very cooperative, super transparent about the whole unauthorized optimization thing." Vekrin's auditory folds twitched rapidly. "The investigation is not the concern. The investigation will conclude in approximately 2 hours, once I interview the maintenance staff and review sensor logs. The repairs, however," he gestured at the monitors, where multiple screens now showed different sections of the station with warning indicators. "Are those all related to the docking bay?" Colton asked weakly. "That is what I am attempting to determine," Vekrin said. His head tilted 20 degrees right. "Astra Chelton, have you performed other unauthorized optimizations?" Astra's eyes darted sideways. "Define other." Vekrin's logic veins blazed so bright they cast shadows across the cramped office. Okay, yes. Technically, I may have improved a few other systems, Astra said quickly. But nothing major. Just like little quality of life enhancements. Barely worth mentioning, really. Mention them, Vekrin said flatly. Astra counted on her fingers. There was the air recycler in Corridor Junction 12, the gravity stabilizer in Engineering Lab Delta, the water purification intake on sublevel 3. The OWNs, oh, and I recalibrated the sensor array in the central hub because the background radiation filtering was set too conservatively. Stop. Vekrin held up one hand with two fingers extended. Engineering Lab Delta, what did you modify? Just the power distribution relay, Astra said. It was operating on a legacy protocol that was super inefficient, so I updated it to the newer standard. Cut power fluctuations by like 40%. The legacy protocol was intentional, Vekrin said. His breathing had become very slow and deliberate. The newer standard is incompatible with the lab's equipment age profile. Well, the equipment seems fine, Astra said defensively. Another monitor beeped. This one showed Engineering Lab Delta, where small electrical arcs were visible dancing across a workstation. It was fine, Vekrin corrected. His steel blue eyes fixed on Astra with an intensity that made her sink lower in her chair. Remain here. Touch nothing. Speak to no one. Probability of additional chaos if you leave this room. 100%. He walked out with those precise, measured steps, and the door sealed behind him with a hydraulic hiss. Astra and Colton sat in silence for approximately 15 seconds. 400,000 credits, Colton said finally. He said it was an estimate, Astra replied. Estimates are always high, padding the budget, very standard. Astra, Colton turned in his chair to face her directly. Why did you disconnect a feedback loop? It was throttling, Astra repeated. It was preventing exactly what happened, Colton said. That's why it's called a safety system. Safety is just what engineers call limitations. They're too scared to optimize, Astra said with confidence that was entirely unearned. Another monitor beeped, then another. A third monitor flashed red, and an automated voice announced coolly, "Attention. Gravity fluctuation detected in Sector 9. Please secure loose objects." Through the door, they heard distant shouting and what sounded like something heavy crashing into a wall. That's probably unrelated, Astra said. The lights flickered. Definitely unrelated, Astra added with less confidence. Colton put his head down on the interrogation table. We're going to get expelled. We're not going to get expelled, Astra said. Worst case scenario, I have to write an apology letter and maybe pay a small fine. You just caused 400,000 credits in damage, Colton said into the table. Estimates are always... The door opened and Vekrin entered, carrying a datapad that looked tiny in his two hands. His logic veins were pulsing in complex patterns that Astra couldn't interpret but suspected weren't good news. His reinforced pads caught the harsh lighting as he moved to the table with that same unsettling precision. I have reviewed sensor logs for all systems you modified, Vekrin said without preamble. His rounded skull remained perfectly level. I have also reviewed Academy records. Your file indicates you achieved top marks in theoretical engineering, but received probationary status for 3 separate incidents involving unauthorized equipment modifications. Those were learning experiences, Astra said. You created a localized electromagnetic pulse that disabled an entire campus building, Vekrin read from the datapad. The shielding was inadequate, Astra protested. You modified a food synthesizer to produce compounds not approved for human consumption, Vekrin continued. They were technically food-adjacent, Astra said, and only mildly hallucinogenic. Colton's head shot up. You didn't tell me about that one. It was during summer term, Astra said. You were off station. Vekrin set down the datapad with deliberate care. The Academy shipped you here with a specific notation in your file. Quote, talented, but requires constant supervision. Tendency toward cascading consequences. Do not allow unsupervised access to critical systems. They said talented first, Astra pointed out. That's the important part. The station administrator did not read your full file, Vekrin said. His auditory folds twitched. She saw your test scores and approved your practicum placement. This is unfortunate. Unfortunate for who? Astra asked. Everyone, Vekrin replied. His steel blue eyes fixed on her again. Walk me through every system you have touched in the 6 days since your arrival. Every system? Astra fidgeted with her tool belt. That's a pretty broad request. Every system, Vekrin repeated. Beginning with your first day, Astra sighed. Okay, fine. First day I noticed the temperature regulation in my quarters was cycling inefficiently, so I adjusted the intake sensors. Your quarters are in residential sector 4, Vekrin said. Yeah, Astra confirmed. Vekrin pulled up something on his datapad and his logic veins pulsed brighter. Residential Sector 4 reported environmental fluctuations beginning 6 days ago. Engineering attributed it to seasonal variance. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about, Astra said. Engineers always blame seasonal variance when they don't want to dig into the actual problem. You were the actual problem, Colton said. I was the solution that revealed the problem, Astra corrected. There's a difference. Vekrin's breathing had gone very slow again, which Astra was learning, meant he was calculating something unpleasant. Continue, a second day. Second day, I was eating in the central hub and noticed the overhead transit tubes were operating with suboptimal acceleration curves. So I accessed a maintenance terminal and smoothed out the velocity algorithm. 4 monitors beeped simultaneously. The transit system has been experiencing timing delays for 5 days, Vekrin said quietly. His head angled forward slightly. Passengers have been arriving at wrong stations. Operations blamed software glitches. Huh, Astra said. I mean, technically I did modify software, so... What else? Vekrin interrupted. Astra counted on her fingers again. There was the lighting in Corridor Junction 6, the humidity controls in the observation deck, the communications relay in maintenance sublevel. Not... Stop. Vekrin held up his hand again. His logic veins were creating that strobe effect. Remain here. He left again, and this time, when the door sealed, Astra heard the distinct sound of an additional lock engaging. He locked us in, Colton said. Probably standard procedure, Astra replied, but she didn't sound convinced. The monitors continued beeping in an increasingly discordant symphony. Astra watched different sections of the station light up with warning indicators like someone was playing the world's worst game of connect the dots. A repair crew appeared on one screen, attempting to access a wall panel. When they opened it, a small explosion of sparks sent them scrambling backward. That's also probably unrelated, Astra said. The lights flickered again and stayed dim for 3 full seconds before returning to full brightness. Colton looked at her with an expression somewhere between horror and resignation. Astra, tell me the truth. How many systems did you actually modify? Astra chewed her lower lip. I mean, I didn't keep exact count because some of them were really minor adjustments, barely worth logging. Approximate count, Colton said. Maybe, Astra paused. 20? 20 systems in 6 days, Colton's voice cracked. 20-ish, Astra corrected. Could be more like 17, could be more like 25. I'd have to review my notes. You took notes? Colton asked with desperate hope. No, Astra admitted. That was hypothetical review. The door unlocked and opened and Vekrin entered, followed by 3 repair crew members wearing full work harnesses and carrying equipment scanners. The office suddenly felt very cramped with 6 occupants. "Scan her," Vekrin said, pointing at Astra. "Scan me?" Astra stood up. "Why would you?" One of the crew members waved a scanner over her, and it beeped urgently. The crew member looked at Vekrin with an expression that transcended species barriers. Pure exasperation. "She has accessed 42 unique systems," the crew member said. "Authorization codes are flagged across 14 station sectors." 42? Astra blinked. "That can't be right." The crew member turned the scanner so she could see the display. It showed a chronological list of system access events, with her Academy credentials highlighted in red. "Oh," Astra said, "I forgot about the recycler in Sector 8, and the power coupling near the cargo bay. And all of you out," Vekrin said to the repair crew. "Send this data to engineering operations. Priority override." The crew members filed out quickly like they were grateful to escape. Vekrin closed the door and stood in front of it with his arms crossed and his logic veins pulsing in what Astra was now certain was the Selfari equivalent of a migraine. 42 systems, Vekrin said slowly, in 6 days. "When you say it like that, it sounds excessive," Astra said. "That is 7 system modifications per day," Vekrin continued. "Every waking hour you have been on this station, you have been creating cascading failures." "Cascading is such a negative word," Astra tried. "I prefer sequential unexpected outcomes." Vekrin's auditory folds flattened against his rounded skull. "The investigation will conclude in 90 minutes. I know what happened. You happened. You are a walking probability nightmare, and the Academy sent you here with minimal oversight because they wanted you to be someone else's problem." His steel blue eyes narrowed. "Congratulations. You are now my problem." "Does this mean I'm under arrest?" Astra asked. "I have not decided," Vekrin said. His breathing slowed again. "I am calculating the probability that allowing you to remain free will result in additional damage versus the probability that processing your arrest will distract resources from damage control." "What are the numbers?" Colton asked. Vekrin's logic veins pulsed rapidly, disturbingly close. The station's main alert system activated with a deep, resonant tone that Astra felt in her chest. An automated voice announced, "Attention all personnel. Station-wide systems, diagnostic in progress. Non-essential personnel report to residential sectors. Essential personnel report to damage control stations." Through the security office door, Astra heard running footsteps and urgent voices and what sounded like several small explosions in rapid succession. Vekrin pulled up his datapad again, and his face did something complicated that might have been resignation or fury or possibly both. "Repairs are now estimated at 6 months minimum." 6 months? Astra's voice was very small. "The engineering team discovered your modifications are interconnected," Vekrin said. "Fixing one system destabilizes others. They are calling it," he checked the datapad, "an optimization hydra. Every solution creates 2 new problems." "That's actually kind of impressive," Astra said. "Do not," Vekrin said very carefully, "interpret this as a compliment. But the investigation will still finish on schedule, right?" Astra asked hopefully. Vekrin looked at her with his luminous steel blue eyes, and his logic veins pulsed in a pattern that somehow conveyed deep existential weariness, despite being purely biological. "Yes," he said flatly. "The investigation will conclude in approximately 90 minutes. I will file my report. It will state that one human Academy student with good intentions and catastrophically poor judgment single-handedly crippled a station that has operated without major incident for 73 years. He paused, and his breathing slowed. "The repairs, however, will take longer than the investigation, How much longer? Colton asked. Vekrin pulled up another screen on his data pad where damage estimates were still climbing in real time. I will know more once engineering completes the full diagnostic. Current projection, 187 days of repairs versus 2 hours of investigation. Astra did some quick mental math, so repairs will take about 93 times longer. Your mathematical ability makes your engineering choices even more baffling, Vekrin said. Another monitor beeped, and Astra saw docking bay 7, where repair crews had finally shut off the spraying manifold, but coolant covered nearly every surface, and 3 hover carts were piled against the far wall in a twisted sculpture of metal and regret. In my defense, Astra began. There is no defense, Vekrin interrupted. There is only documentation and damage control. He walked toward the door with his precise measured steps and paused with one hand on the release. You will remain in this office. Colton Weir will remain in this office. Probability of station survival if either of you leaves, 42% and dropping. He exited, and the lock engaged with that same hydraulic hiss. Astra and Colton sat in heavy silence, broken only by the periodic beeping of monitors and distant station alerts. 6 months, Colton said eventually. He said that was an estimate, Astra replied without conviction. Estimates are always, Colton began. Don't, Astra said. Just don't. On the monitors, the cascade of system failures continued spreading through the station with the inexorable logic of dominoes designed by someone who had fundamentally misunderstood both dominoes and logic. And in engineering operations, somewhere 3 levels down, a repair supervisor was updating the damage projection timeline and wondering how exactly one human girl had accomplished what would have taken a dedicated saboteur months of damage. Planning. The answer, of course, was simple. She was trying to help. Vekrin returned 40 minutes later with a data pad and an expression that suggested his probability calculations had revealed nothing but suffering. His logic veins pulsed in slow, rhythmic waves across his muted, peach-toned skin. The diagnostic is complete, he announced, his steel-blue eyes fixed on Astra. Engineering has identified 68 separate system modifications. 68? Astra sat up straighter. The scanner said 42. The scanner detected direct access, Vekrin explained with deliberate patience. Engineering discovered secondary modifications. Systems you changed that automatically altered connected systems. He pulled up a holographic display showing the station with bright red lines connecting different sectors in chaotic web patterns. This is the current failure cascade. The hologram looked like someone had let a spider design a transit map during a seizure. The repair timeline is now 8 months, Vekrin continued. His breathing slowed to that calculating rhythm. Repair costs exceed 700,000 credits. Colton made a sound like a dying small animal. The door opened and a short woman in an administrator's uniform entered with elaborate braiding on the shoulders. She looked at Astra with bureaucratic exhaustion. I am Administrator Kelex, she said crisply. I approved your practicum placement without reading your full file. This was an error. She pulled up her data pad. Investigator Vekrin completed his report. You modified 68 systems without authorization, causing cascading failures. Repairs will take 8 months minimum. Astra slumped in her chair. However, Kelex continued, Investigator Vekrin noted your modifications, while catastrophically implemented, demonstrated significant theoretical merit. Your fuel efficiency improvement would have worked on newer systems. Your transit algorithm is mathematically elegant. Astra blinked. Really? Really, Kelex confirmed. Which makes this frustrating because you are clearly talented and clearly incapable of understanding safety protocols. Vekrin's logic veins pulsed in agreement. You are hereby banned from touching any station system, Kelex said. You will complete practicum hours by documenting every modification for repair crews. You will work under direct supervision with no tool access." She paused. "I am also submitting a formal commendation to the Academy for innovative thinking and advanced theoretical application." "Wait, what?" Colton said. "The girl has talent," Kalex said. "She needs to learn when not to use it." She left with brisk efficiency. Vekrin stood by the door with his steel blue eyes wide. "I calculated 43 possible outcomes. That was not one of them." "So I'm not expelled?" Astra asked. "You are banned from the thing you were learning," Vekrin replied, "but praised for failing spectacularly. Humans are probability nightmares." He escorted them to their quarters with his precise, measured steps. At the door, he paused, and his auditory folds shifted. "For what it is worth," he said quietly, "the fuel efficiency modification would have worked brilliantly on a newer station." "Just wrong about everything else?" Astra asked. "Comprehensively," Vekrin confirmed. He walked away, and Astra entered her quarters where the temperature cycled erratically because she'd modified it on day 1. 8 months of repairs, 2 hours of investigation, and one human girl who finally learned that sometimes the best optimization is leaving things alone. Probably